One of the simplest ways to describe the misunderstanding around wrongful dismissal is when an employee is dismissed and they believe they've done nothing wrong, and therefore they immediately believe that this defines wrongful dismissal. However, even if they've done nothing wrong, so to speak, so long as their employer provides to them the statutory requirements of notice and or severance, there is no wrongful dismissal. People assume that when they're being dismissed through no fault of their own, it's a wrongful dismissal. However, that's not the legal term for wrongful dismissal. Wrongful dismissal is when your employer claims that you're being dismissed with just cause and you're not able to demonstrate just cause. So it's their opinion, it's subjective, it's not substantiated with historical evidence of warnings, verbal, written, and so forth, to the point where it's very clear that your actions will result in your termination.
Can you talk more about the misconception that people have? Can you maybe give an example?
Sure. Especially longer serving employees who have been at a company through no fault of their own. One day after many, many years of service, typically, they'll be called into a meeting and told, unfortunately, we no longer require your services. Sometimes there might be something going on at work, coincidence or not, and they may assume that the reason they're being let go is because of some other minor issue. Maybe they've sent an inappropriate email, they've had a conflict with somebody, some sort of situation that isn't a very positive one, but nonetheless not warranted for dismissal of any kind, and they assume that because of some other reason they're being let go. Or sometimes they just believe that they've done absolutely nothing wrong, and therefore it's impossible for an employer to let you go when you're not at fault at all. But the reality is that under the law, an employer can let go of anyone at any point in time as long as they provide the appropriate statutory requirements of notice and, if applicable, depending on the province and your service and the company's payroll and number of employees being let go. In some situations where it's mass termination, whether or not they would also owe you any severance as a statutory minimum.
Is there any differences between the provinces?
Yes.
How does that apply to someone who thinks they've been wrongfully dismissed?
Actually, as far as province to province, wrongful dismissal is very similar province to province. It basically, wrongful dismissal is when an employer lets you go without cause and doesn't pay you the statutory requirement. So they don't have evidence of cause, they let you go anyway, and maybe it's one event, and it's an event that doesn't substantiate cause. So somebody is late for work or doesn't show up, something of this nature, and the person reports into work the next day, and they're let go on the spot. That most likely is not going to meet the criteria of just cause when it's one single event without any previous wrongdoings.
Okay, and why does that happen? Why do people sometimes get terminated after maybe they came in late or something that they feel is not a big deal, and all of a sudden they come into work and they're fired?
Well, no differently than employees believing something means something when it doesn't, and or an employee, when they believe what wrongful dismissal means. Employers also have a misunderstanding of what just cause is or what cause for dismissal is, and it's often just their own opinion. Oh, well, we really needed this person today. They created this kind of situation. Therefore, I have grounds to terminate them with cause, without actually understanding what the legal requirements are.
So often the employer sometimes is also as much in the dark as an employee would be?
Correct.
And how can fair severance pay help someone who may feel they've been put in this situation? What would they need to know?
Well, we can look at the situation and assess whether or not there was just cause demonstrated, and often it's not as simple as just looking at the situation based on the individual's account of events. It would also require viewing the bona fide requirements of the position, which that individual may or may not be familiar with based on the type of work that they're doing. It also may include looking at specific policies of the company. So again, unfortunately, employees who are working out there sometimes don't recognize that when they have been let go, it was just cause and they just have a misunderstanding of the situation because they don't recall specific facts or details of the circumstances of their employment agreement, which is where we come in. And when we find that those areas are not relevant, and in many cases they aren't, then we can certainly assist to demonstrate that notice and perhaps severance is owed to the individual and educate the employer to those facts.
And help them get the money that they're owed, basically.
Correct.